we're human beings, so we're going to be flawed. They're never going to do what we ask them to do. They're never going to grow as fast as we want them to grow, right? We're going to get impatient. They're not going to pick up the calls when they're supposed to pick up the calls. So what do I need to do?
All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Light It Up Podcast. We are thrilled to have with us today Bernie Gallerani. Bernie, thank you so much for being here to the platform. So obviously it was an easy decision to have you on here.
I appreciate that.
Bernie, when you think about it, there's 3 MFO teams that come to mind whenever I think of like the biggest influences in my life. And I think it's the same for you. It's always you, Josh, and the Ames team within the organization that have had the biggest influence. And we've probably quoted you a crap ton of times on this podcast from small masterminds and things that you've said because they resonate so much. So I'm super excited to go into this. But first, let's do the lightning round.
So we like to start with this lightning round where we'll hit you with some questions. They're fun, icebreakers. We get to know you a little bit better.
I'm a little nervous. I'm on pins and needles, but
yeah, I'm sure you're shaking in your boots.
All right, Skip, go.
I always like this one. What mistake do you keep making over and over again?
Thinking that that behavioral change in people happens quick.
Yeah.
It's a long, drawn out process. And so I don't think I've learned it. I think that I'm working on continually realizing that change in human behavior just takes a really long time.
Yeah. Can you give an example of that?
You mean with agents or people who work with you?
Well, even with us, I was talking to Mike Ferry a couple weeks ago on something that I was discouraged on within the team building process. And it was really something to the fact that, do you feel like I'm overtraining? Do you feel like, and he asked me why I felt that way, like why I felt I was overtraining potentially. And I just said, well, they're just not growing as fast as I'd like them to. And he says, well, that's called human beings, and they're allowed to grow at their own pace, not as fast as you want them to. And so he said, Bernie, let me ask you, how long have you been in my coaching? And I said, for 18 years. And he says, do you do 100% of the things that I ask you to do? And I said, no. And he says, out of all the things that you do that I teach you, how much of it do you really use in your business? I said, about 25%. And he says, don't you think that frustrates me a little bit? And I said, well, that's a good point. So I think that when you lead people and you believe in people even more than they believe in themselves is the challenge, that you want to see them grow at a much rapid pace, right? Because we've been there. So sometimes we forget it took me 18 years to get to where I was in team building and being an agent also, that I want to take all this experience of what I've learned and just cram it down their throat and then have them grow at an exceptional level.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, it just takes a long time. And I think patience in the process is super important. As a coach and leader for my company, and also for the agent who could also get discouraged in the process. So just being patient, I think, through the process. And then as a coach, allowing myself to just understand that they're growing at their own rate.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of shadowing you like a month ago or 2 months ago. And it's really because you care. And that's the reason why you want them to know all that information. It's because you genuinely want to see them flourish in their best possible way, the best possible way for them. All right, next question. If you could have any superpower, which one would you choose?
That's pretty broad. I think that enjoying the journey for me of life, because sometimes we can get all caught up in our businesses and what that means for us and our families. And I think just if I could have a superpower of turning that switch off, or is just really just enjoying whatever the journey is and not get caught up in all the weeds and the minutiae of it all. I know that probably is a different answer than you wanted, but at my age today and the time that I've been in the business, I realize that you can get drawn in to things that you think are important. And so finding more joy in the process. If I could have a superpower and I could learn to find more joy in the process, that's what it would be.
Nice.
All right, last one here. What chance encounter changed your life forever?
Meeting Mike Ferry.
As I pulled that card out of the deck, I was like, I sort of know the answer to this, but I think it's a good segue.
How did you meet Mike?
I moved here from Las Vegas in 2004, from California originally, Italian, so I speak kind of fast, and then lived in Las Vegas for 10 years. And when I moved here in 2004 to become a real estate agent, I was really concerned because I was kind of coming into the South where it was a little slower and the little drawn out kind of Southern draw. And I just kind of felt like I didn't fit in, to be honest with you. And so I figured if I hired a coach, they could maybe help me how to talk to people, which I guess with Mike Ferry, he did, but it was just different than I had thought.
Yeah.
And so I just went online and I searched out coaching companies that offered real estate coaching at that time. There was very few in those days. In 2004, there weren't many. Now there's a ton. But so I ended up landing on the Mike Ferry organization, and I signed up and paid my money to him in December of 04. And I started coaching first week of January of 05. And so that's how long I've been an agent, since 05.
And I know that it was you, John Ames, Josh. It's almost like you guys almost started all at the same time. And it was like within that support group, you guys all built each other up as you guys were going through this too.
I think when it comes to Josh and John, the Bernie Gallerani real estate company wouldn't be what it is today. Josh, for a lot of real reasons, as you know, he's one of the smartest people I've ever encountered to meet in the business. And John and I just were kind of in the same boat at the same time, trying to figure it out. So he and I just leaned on each other.
Yeah.
And I think between all the knowledge John Ames had and then all the drive that I had, because I had a high level of expectation for myself. And then John really helped me envision things also. So between the both of us, it ended up working out that we all just leaned on each other, the three of us. Mike always talks about, that you're stronger in threes. And so for us, it was really just empowering each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really kind of goes into what I appreciate the most about you is that you're very, very good at being able to find, the people that you need to like learn from, or the people for the right roles, the right seats, or the right people for the right seats. Like you're very good at doing that, and you'll humbly say you attracted it. But can you walk us through how that process started for building the team and finding the right people to fill those right seats for you?
Yeah, well, let me just add this: filling the seats for the right people. I got a little lucky when I found my operations manager. So sometimes a lot of luck's important, is an important thing too, and it's not always skill there. But so I started in 05 and was mainly a listing agent. Didn't work with many buyers, and I would say I had my first buyer's agent within my first few months of being a realtor, just because I was asked to not work with buyers, to only be a listing agent, right? List to last, as they say. Mm-hmm. So I was very coachable, and so when my coach said don't really work with buyers, I didn't really work with buyers. So he said either bring in an agent to work with your buyers or hand your buyers out to somebody else in the company and get a referral. And so I just went with bringing in a buyer's agent, and I went through a couple of those early on. So I finally found a buyer's agent that I really enjoyed working with, and he's still on my team today. He's been on my team for about 12 years. And so it was him and I, my wife, and I had a personal assistant, and I was listing all the properties and he was working with all the buyers. And so we did that one for a while. And then I thought, well, I want to give him as much opportunity as I could. So I started buying a couple leads, and not only was he getting sign calls and past clients that I had worked with that wanted to buy properties, but people that were coming off sign calls. And then I bought, some PPC leads at that time off a company called Boomtown, which a lot of people know. So I was feeding him, and I thought, okay, this is working really well. So I got another buyer's agent, and so that's kind of how it works. So it was myself, another buyer's agent, and I was listing all the properties, and they were working the buyers, and I would purchase a few more leads that I felt would keep them busy. And then I went and got another buyer's agent, and then I got another buyer's agent. So then I had 4 buyer's agents. And I found that in that process, it was taking away a lot of time into my personal production. Yeah. That was the challenge that I had. Was here I'm a high-end producing agent selling 150 homes a year, and my volume started to go down because I was now managing people, and I didn't really want to do that. So I struggled with that a little bit for a while. Probably wasn't a very good leader. In fact, I know I wasn't a very good leader. So then I ended up hiring my operations manager, Kurt, who you've met. And he didn't really have any experience either in the real estate business. And so he came from a restaurant background. At that point, I had 6 buyer's agents. I was the listing agent, the only listing agent. I just said, hey, do me a favor, answer all their questions. I want to go back to work. I want to prospect for 4 or 5 hours a day. I want to get back to my glory of listing and selling a lot of properties. And so basically, I kind of hired him just to answer any questions that the agents might have had, take care of all the technology stuff where it was his strength and not mine. And then at one point, he came to me, and it was probably several months into his job. And he said, man, what do you want me to do? Like, I've done all the things you've asked me to do. I'm taking care of the agents. Everything seems to be flowing. Well, I didn't have an answer for him because I was just a listing agent. So I said, well, go hire another agent. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to stay busy, go bring in more people.
Yeah.
So he then brought in, a 7th and an 8th and a 9th and a 10th and 11th and a 12th and 13th and 14th and 15th, right? And it's like, okay, now there's actually a business forming on this buyer's agent side.
Yeah.
I'm still the main listing agent. They're bringing in a few listings for themselves, but mainly I'm the listing agent. And then it got to a point where that team that Kurt had built under my name and under my tutelage actually ended up bringing in and profiting more money than I was making as a real estate agent.
Wow.
And so then I thought to myself at that point, man, what would my life look like if I didn't have to list and sell properties anymore? And I could just help Kurt build this great company that he was already building. And that's kind of how it took off. And so it was really, to be honest with you, it was never a plan. It was never part of the plan to be what we became early on that forced me to make a pretty hard decision. And that was, do I love leading people more than I love listing property?
Yeah.
And so the answer to that was, I thought I loved coaching and training people better. So when I left selling, listing and property, I kind of over the years had reduced that level of volume that I did. So, I was selling 100 plus houses, then 80 homes, and then 60 homes. Then I kind of just got to the point where the team was outperforming me, even at that level. I then said, well, I'll get into management and training and coaching. And I realized I sucked at it. Like I wasn't a good manager or a good trainer. I was probably a pretty enthusiastic guy, but probably wasn't good in those areas. So I had to it took me a long time. It took a long time to figure out how do I become a leader and a better manager. I'm probably not a very good manager. Actually, I suck. To be honest with you. But I'm probably a pretty good inspirer and a probably good coach, I would guess. I'm a probably better coach than anything else. But Kurt's a good manager, and Wendy, my wife's a good manager in the administrative department. And then I'm just, KIRO, you saw me.
You're a great leader.
I don't need to tell you because you guys sat in that room and saw how I operate, right?
No. You're a great leader because you were walking in there, like you were introducing us to people and you were saying, like, this is Raymond. He used to be my neighbor and I've known him for so long. He comes over, does like nothing about like, oh yeah, he's an agent. He does X, Y, Z. This is his style. It's like the individual. And then it's like every single agent, like she's amazing. She has an amazing story and this, that, and the other. And he's like, you guys have to talk to her. She's such an amazing person. So you are a great leader because I feel like the people who are there, who you've developed will probably stay with you until the end. And if you probably transitioned industries and said, hey, we're going to sell insurance tomorrow, they'd probably be like, we're with you. Right?
Oh, no, they would. Yeah.
So
right.
You are a great leader. The one thing that was the most impressive is that like 3 years ago, and I remember this not to the day, we were actually in the old 50 Harrison office.
I remember sitting at that table.
Yeah, we were sitting at the table. We were hanging out with Chase Ames, and he was playing a mastermind call. And it was about like this thing called entrepreneurship. And we were like, what is this about? And it's you talking about how investing into leads and the ROI of leads, some people might say it's not profitable, but you were just talking about how the return on investment, when you think about it in a different way, the things you look at change. And that's actually a quote that you said, when you look at things differently, the things you look at change.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was just like, oh wow, there's something on the other side of this. So you opened up that big picture of like thinking a little bit differently about that.
Well, the one that the quote that I took from that conversation was a little bit more direct.
Which one was that?
It was stop thinking like a fucking realtor. Well, I think we came to you with some questions about me and KIRO. We're trying to grow our business. And Bernie, why does this happen? Why is this not working? What, sort of like what you were referring to before about being impatient and, just wanting growth much quicker. And that's what you had said to us. Stop thinking like a fucking realtor. And I say that to myself all the time now, because when you switch from top producing listing agent to becoming a team leader or team owner, you have to look at things a lot differently.
It's always a challenge we have, I think, within our group of MFO and the people that are in our mastermind groups and things like that. And that is they're still trying to figure out how to become successful in team ownership and get out of production, but yet they're so tied to production. I was having a conversation with somebody recently that's in that group, and they were talking about, well, I'm still the rainmaker, so I have to continue to keep being the rainmaker. And I respect that, by the way. I do, because I was there. But unless you burn the boats, you're always going to be the rainmaker. And so for me, I happen to have had a really dynamic operations manager who forced me to look at it differently. Like for this individual I was talking about, they want to get out, and how do I create a company that I can get out? For me, it happened by accident where it almost forced me out. But like one day I just looked at it and went, man, I'll never forget this. I'll share the story. So Mike Ferry has been coaching me personally for about 7 years. And so as I was building the team, or I was selling, I really wasn't building a team. Kurt was building a team, I was selling. But Mike would ask me to send him my P&L every month. And so every time I'd send him my P&L, he would ask me, he'd go, when are you going to get out of selling and start doing this thing full time? And so, that was never a Mike Ferry comment, because everyone that knew Mike Ferry would say, oh, Mike says, don't build teams, right?
Yeah.
And so he would say that. I would say the same thing to Mike every time he would ask me this. And this probably went on 6 or 8 times, I guess, where this conversation took place. And I would say the same thing. And I said, here's the problem. I said, I'm greedy for the money. I don't trust the people in the company to feed my family and pay for my retirement. And so Mike would always say, well, that's fair. And then we would move on to a different conversation. So I kept saying this over and over and over again. Well, the last time I said it to him, he kind of chuckled and he went, remember this, you can't trust people because they're human beings and we're all faulty of things. He says, but what you can do is trust a system. So what you're saying to me is your system is not trustworthy. So you're leaning on the people. And I went, wow, like that was a pretty dynamic, profound statement that he made. Yeah. And when I'm putting the stock in the people, and what he's saying is, we're human beings, so we're going to be flawed. They're never going to do what we ask them to do. They're never going to grow as fast as we want them to grow, right? We're going to get impatient. They're not going to pick up the calls when they're supposed to pick up the calls. So what do I need to do? I need to create a system that lets the faultiness of the people land inside the system, and then the system picks up the problems. And when I realized that, I said, okay, I've got to build a company that has fail safes inside of it. When the human being makes a mistake, then the system then picks up the problem. And that's when I started to realize that I could build a company. I started not leaning on what the agent did or did not do, because the agent was always going to do something that I didn't want them to do. They were always going to fall short of the expectation that I had. They were always going to find a reason why they didn't want to show up to work or they didn't want to make the calls. So that's when, KIRO, when you came to our office and you saw our ISA team, right? We have all of our different systems that support the failure of a human being, right? Or the agent, we'll say it in this manner. And I'm not knocking the agent. I'm just saying that we lean so much on the level of their success that we can never trust, well, what if the company falls apart because this person didn't do their job or this person do this job? What I decided to do was build a system that supported that failure. Yeah. And that's where I think our team has shined.
Yeah. It's also with the vision. Like you have really, you make it you're very intentional about just setting a clear vision and being constantly moving that needle forward. It's when we were shadowing Bernie, he's like, oh, I don't know how to turn on the TV. I thought he was lying until he was like, well, how do you do this thing? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, damn, Bernie. But it's like, he's like, I'm very focused on like what I need to do to move the needle forward and like thinking the bigger picture and everything else from there. And your only role right now is coaching and developing the agent's skills, both personally and skill wise. And then other than that, just focusing on where the company's direction is going now.
Yeah, visionary. And then I coach the agents. And since the change of the market happened in June or so of 22, one of my sales manager / recruiter at that point made a decision to get into real estate and sell for our team, which was great. So Kurt and I decided that I was going to pick up all the coaching with the agents. Kurt would take on the recruiting. So we went, we dropped a 6-figure income, and that agent became a generator versus an expense, which was fine with us. And so we picked that up, which was great because I wanted to be able to, I was the most experienced agent inside the company to teach these agents how to get through this tougher time in the real estate business. I like it. It gives me something to do every day. But other than that, inside the company and by design, by plan, I don't have a lot to do other than that, other than make the vision of the company, coach the agents, and then just, watch it, answer questions that Kurt may have. And it's working. Yeah.
In terms of thinking bigger, one of the things that you do a really good job in is constantly trying to find ways to think bigger. I know that in one of the calls that was had maybe a couple of years ago, you had an interaction with a guy who was either like in IT or something, where he was talking about like return on investments, percentages of returns, and it kind of changed your perspective of investing in leads. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah. So I had a relationship with this guy he was a client of mine, and I got to know him, became a friend of mine. He was young, he was in his mid or late 20s. at that time, and he was a multimillionaire. And he would buy a lot of online PPC type of leads. He was in the gaming business. And so, he was worth a lot of money. I mean, probably $20 million, $25 million at that particular time at a young 20-something old age. And so I got to know him a little bit, started picking his brain. He was not overly open to discussing his entire business with me. I don't know why, but he did share enough with me that got me thinking. And here's what he said. He was investing $1 million a month in leads. And so he would spend on Google $1 million for PPC leads per month. And his return on that investment, now he was a one-man show, by the way. He didn't have any employees, so he was the only employee in his company.
Wow.
And so, and he would get back on average $1.8 million in return of revenue. So he would have $1 million, and then he would vest that $1 million. He'd get $1.8 million back, his net profit off of that business. He didn't have an office, no bricks and mortar. He worked from home off his laptop at his, in his $2 million house at his pool.
Wow.
And so he would then he was making about $800,000 per month net.
Big.
Okay. Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So you start calculating that kind of money and you're like, wait a minute, this guy's making 10 million a year. He's 27, 28 years old. And so he says, yeah, he goes, so I invested $1 million. I make 800,000 back. I invest $1 million, make 800,000 back. I said, so your investment is $1 million. He says, no. I said, so your investment is 12 million. He goes, no, my investment is 1 million. So he says, no, really, my investment is $1 million. I just used the $1 million 12 times.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. And so he kind of shares that with me. And he says, so I'm investing $1 million. I'm just using it 12 times. I'm taking the $1 million back, putting the $1 million back in, taking the $1 million back, putting the $1 million again. So it's $1 million. I said, so it's costing you $1 million to make 10 million. He says, yes, but it really doesn't cost me anything to make 10 million. I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, it's my $1 million to start with, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, when I retire, what am I going to do? I'm going to take that $1 million back, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, so they're using my $1 million so I can make 10 million, but in the end, I'm going to take that $1 million back. So I'm generating $10 million a year and it's not costing me anything.
Yeah.
I love that.
When I learned that and I had that perception, I started thinking about like clothes and shoes and things like that, right? He goes, no matter what you buy, it's going to have a depreciation asset. So I pay $100 for the shirt, and then, after you wear it for, 6 months or something, you're going to go give it to Goodwill and it's going to have no value anymore, right? Your shoes, the same thing. I'm like, well, that's interesting. He goes, not when you buy online leads. When you buy online leads, you get your $1 million back, or in this case, let's just say it's 200,000 or 300,000 or whatever a realtor is paying for online leads a month. So you're putting 2 million in, 3 million in, whatever it is a year, you're getting that money back, you're getting that money back. So you're like, okay, well, I'm putting in, let's say 200,000 a month. I have to have the 200,000.
Yeah.
I use the 200,000 every month. I then keep circulating that every month. I then generate, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $800,000 a year off that investment. I then keep using and repurposing that money. And then when I decide to stop buying leads, I take that 200 grand and put it in my pocket.
Yeah.
That perspective shift was insane when we heard it the first time. And it's such an amazing
I remember
story
that story
to think about.
too. Yeah.
And there was, Bernie, you're full of really good stories like those, because there was one that you shared about an older gentleman who got into the business probably past the age of retirement. And he was telling you the only reason why you're not moving as fast as, you would like to, or whatever the case it is because you think you have time. Can you share that story? Because that's a great one too.
Yeah. Do you want me to share yeah. So we were masterminding with this individual, and he says, that time he was 67. And so he's like 74 now. But he was working with a lot of urgency, and he built a company from the age of 67 up to the time he was about 70, early 70s, to 700 agents. And so here's a guy who was basically bankrupt and built this amazing company in a matter of just a few years. And Josh and John and all of us other ones are just shaking our head going, the heck, like, what are we doing wrong, And I remember him saying, he goes, you guys think you have time. Yeah. He says, at my age, I'm running out of time. So I don't have time to watch something grow. I have to force it to grow right away. Man, that was so big, And he says the joke, he goes, when I tell my wife to go to the grocery store, to buy bananas that I can eat, because if they're green, I may not have enough time to be around long enough to eat them. And so he's a pretty funny guy, but I think a little of us kind of look like that. We think we have a lot of time.
Yeah.
We don't know how much time we have. Like we're going, hey, listen, and let's build our company. There's a great book by Price Pritchard called Quantum Leap.
Yep.
But he looks at, let's build our business and grow this 20% every year. Well, why not grow it 100% every year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend Robert was able to do that, and his company built it 100, 200%. Every 12 months, he had another 150, 200 agents. And you look at this going, well, how is that possible? He didn't limit himself. And that's kind of where the saying came from, is stop thinking like a realtor. Stop, like a regular business person might look at it and go, we grow at 20% a year. We look at it, or I might look at it and go, well, why can't I build it at 100% growing company? I haven't gotten there yet because I'm still not building my company at 100% of the year. But I think it's a really good thought.
Yeah. It was interesting because Bernie has the square footage of your space is like 10 or 20,000 right now.
It's 12.
12. And it's a huge space.
Yeah.
And
I've been there. I was there a few years ago.
No, he just got a new place.
I haven't been there.
Yeah. So it's huge in the back. It's there. I go up to Bernie. I'm like, hey, why don't you just like fill up a bunch of people here? He's like, I don't want that. I'm like, why not? Think about it. He's like, I don't want to fill it up and like dilute this culture. Like, you've done a really good job too of being very selective. So it's like it has to grow with the culture almost as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I'm not saying what I'm doing is right. I think that every owner today has to make a decision on what they want to go to work to every day and see and be around.
Yeah.
You know, in the world that I live in, I look at realtors a little bit different than probably some others. And that is, they're in the greatest opportunity to make money. But listen, we don't have to have a higher education. We got to pass a stupid test, right? And then you look at this and go, you can get paid $8, $10, $12, $15, $18, $20,000, $30,000, whatever, per house sale.
Yeah.
And my concern and question always is, if you had this kind of opportunity to immense wealth, not make a living, but immense wealth, like the door is open that says you're uneducated, right? Well, I have a college degree. Well, good for you, but you're maybe broke. So if you're educated or uneducated, you could be a millionaire. If you have a high school diploma, you can be a millionaire. If you have a low IQ, you could be a millionaire. All you have to do is apply yourself in the real estate business. So I always looked at real estate as a massive opportunity that provides a financial opportunity for a lot of people to give things to their families that would never otherwise be possible, right? Make more money than doctors, than lawyers. I mean, I got friends of mine who are doctors who go to medical school and they go do all that stuff and they're making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, that might be okay, but I can't live off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So what I try to instill in my agents is, you have such a great opportunity. Let's not squander it.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know how long this opportunity of real estate is going to be around. Real estate's changed tremendously over the last 5, 6, 7 years. We don't even know what the next 5 or 6 or 7 years are. So why don't we just, make it the biggest amount of money, the most amount of money that we possibly can. So first, culturally, when the office goes, I thought, who do I want to hang out with? And when I was in the Mike Ferry system, and I would go to these Mike Ferry events, and as you guys all know, because you've been to them, everybody gets all excited and jazzed up and jumps up and down, and you're hanging out with a bunch of multimillionaires who are just excited about life and selling houses. And we jump on the airplane and we fly back home, and we go back to our regular real estate office, and we're like, where's all the energy?
Yeah.
Where's all the excitement, right? And so I thought, man, how great would it be to have a bunch of Mike Ferry office people that had that kind of culture working in my 4 walls.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm going to create that, I'm going to create them to work for my company. So, Kiro, to answer your question, why I think the way I do, it's not that I can't have 40 people in my company that are 50 or 60 or whatever. They're just really hard to find in our industry.
Yeah.
That people that want to really get excited about going to work and want to make a lot of money, make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And you find most of them don't want to work. And so to answer your question, I don't want to be around people that don't think that way.
Yeah.
So I would rather, I've got 12,000 square feet, but I only need 8 because I only have room for 8,000 square feet of good quality people.
Yeah.
And if I find enough to open up the back end of that, and I feel empowered to want to be around those people, then I'll invite them into my company. We'll buy more desks and more chairs. But until then, we just keep it small. Like why buy a desk and a phone or a chair for an agent that doesn't want to be productive?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense to me. So I say to everybody in the company, or my management staff anyway, is I go, listen, I'm going to bring somebody into the company that inspires me. And so I'm not easily inspired. And that is, show up to work every day and want to really make something positive out of your life.
Yeah.
And so if I feel inspired by you, then you can continue to keep working inside the company. But if for some reason I feel like you're not a cultural fit for us anymore. It's just time to move on. And so it doesn't do us any good to have a whole bunch of space if we can't find people to fill it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Bernie, how is the shift in the market, as you referred to, let's say since June 2022, how has that impacted things on your team?
I mean, I think probably like a lot of people in the country, it has impacted our office, and which was really good at the time we made a shift into me coaching. Was I went through 2008, right, when the market was pretty tough in 08. And so I was probably the only one inside the company that could understand how to excel in a down market. And it was nothing more than training the mindset, because a lot of the agents came into the business. I had several that were in 2000. I think Raymond started with me in 2012 or 13 or something like that. Maybe it was 2010. But anyways, he went from 10, 11, and all the way up. He's still with me. He's been with me about 12 years. But all the agents inside my company started after that, all brand new agents. So 15, 17, 20, 21, whatever. So nobody, including Raymond, my best guy, had ever understood what the dynamics of 2008 was.
Yeah.
So I knew I was the only person in there that had dealt with that adversity of 08. So I had to just build the strength mentally into my team. And I used to tell them, listen, this market should never dictate your goal. You're going to have to, it's a skill game, and you're learning a different skill. This is the skill we have to learn now. So I don't believe that the down market should be a reason why our production is down.
Yeah.
But it took some time to train the agent the other way. Right? Oh, because everyone's talking about the interest rates and no one's buying. Oh, the market's going to fall apart. We're in a recession. And I just keep sharing with them, listen, this is a new skill. And if you look at it as saying, I just don't know this skill yet, and we're going to work on this skill, you will see that you're actually going to have the best year ever. We have agents right now that are having really great years in this year, 2023. I've got one that is tracking for herself, which the most she's made before is in the low 300s. And coaching her, she's tracking to make $400,000 this year for herself. And so you look at this going, well, while everybody else is dying on the vine or struggling or using the excuses, this agent is actually excelling. And so we have several stories like that. Yeah. And we have some that have chose to be victims, and their production is sliding south. We have other ones that their business is heading north. And so my answer to your question is just spend time reframing their opinion of the market. And I think that for most of my agents, if they looked at it the right way, which a lot of them are, they'll have the best year they ever had this year.
Yeah, that's a valid point, because when you reframe it, you come from a place of curiosity to overcome it versus letting fear disable you from actually making the next call or figuring.
Well, as leaders too, we can't buy into it.
Yeah.
I mean, as a leadership, we can't buy into this. In 2008, in the national market anyway, 8% of our homes sold in 2008, 2009, 2010. No. We had an 8% selling rate for what was on the market. I mean, if you look at that, that's 92%
fall apart.
92% not selling.
Yeah.
92% failure rate, really, if you don't look at it that way. But yet I was still able to sell 100 homes a year in that down market, and my business took off during that time where everybody else, the other agents came out. But if you think about, it was 2.2 million licensed agents in 2006. And in 2010, there was 970,000 agents left. So I just told you it was pretty much a bloodbath, right?
Yeah.
But yet myself and a lot of these Mike Ferry agents, their business took off because that was our skill, right? Mike taught us that. This is no different. So what happens is we were in this glory day of 2020 and 2021, and everyone's like, woohoo, this is really great. And then it changed. It's like, no, guys, you don't understand. This is way better than 08. And let me tell you what happened to me in 08. I grew this way. Well, how did that happen? Mike Ferry just changed how I looked at things. And I was able to excel at a level, and I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. And so I think the leadership in any company, if their company is suffering, the leadership is got to change the framing and the attitude of the agent by the attitude of the leader.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It all comes down to tracking the numbers and seeing where you are and what you need to do to improve it, instead of saying it's not working what used to work in the past, because that's going to have to be changed.
I think in that realm, I think one of the best exercises actually in our office, remember you used to put up the number of deals
Active,
that went pending
sold,
that day or that week or that month. And in reality, we all think, oh, we're in this world where nothing's going under contract, maybe because you haven't put something under contract. But in your current market, look at this, 45 homes went under contract yesterday. So somebody's doing these deals. Who is it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Mike says this, let's just say we'll use 5,000. It was like 4,700. But Mike says there's going to be 5 million home sales in the United States in 2023. And the question that you have to ask yourself is just how many of those do you want to get?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be agents dropping off out of the real estate business because it's just too hard for them. And the only reason it's too hard for them is A, they lack the skill or the discipline, whether it's personal discipline or discipline within the business. That's the only reason why an agent fails. An agent doesn't fail because the real estate business is going down. The real estate agent fails because they don't possess the skill and they're not willing to learn the skill to achieve this market. And Michael always talk about it, it's a cyclical business, right? It's always going to go up and it's go down. Yeah. So if you don't learn the skill, then every 8 years you're going to be out of the business because it always shifts about every 8 years or so, right? Every 6 to 8 years. Yep. We had a little extent because of the 2020, but had 2020 not hit, we'd have been probably in some sort of a housing recession or a recession in 2018, 2019. 2020 hit and that caused some craziness to happen. But I think that the problem here is not, or the changing market, maybe is a better way to put it. I think the real problem here is the agent's not willing to learn the skill necessary, and it's easier to blame the market than it is to put in the time to learn the skill. Yeah. And that's really unfortunate because there's so much money in the business. They could really do really great, but they decide to point the finger and blame somebody else. And with my group, I will never accept that. If you choose to get out of this business, it's not because you can't do it. It's just you're choosing not to.
Yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think it's, if you think about it, the people that are in the industry right now that are choosing not to further their skills, they probably fall into two buckets. It's either the older agent, right, who doesn't want to develop new skills, or the younger agent who thinks that these transactions should just be falling in their lap. Yeah. And it's probably because over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right, they were in the boat and the fish were jumping right in the boat. Yeah. And the deals are falling right in your lap.
How much fishing skill do you need when you don't even have to throw a hook in the water and put bait in the fish are jumping in? You're coming back thinking, what a great fisherman I am. No, they were jumping in the boat. Yeah. Right. And then all of a sudden now you gotta bait the hook, you gotta throw it out, and you gotta be patient. You're like, well, this sucks. Yeah. So I'm gonna go home and drink a beer. I'm like, no, that's called fishing. Before it wasn't really fishing.
Yeah. Somebody else was used the analogy, was it Robbie T? He was like, we've all been playing basketball on the Little Tykes hoop for the last 2 years. He goes, all they did now was just raise the hoop, and now we're playing on a real hoop, and you guys can't dunk anymore, and everybody's getting pissed off. Yeah,
that's a great analogy.
It is. So Bernie, you being like, your track record of developing people is pretty rock solid right now, because the average agent on your team does a enormous amount, like average production on your team. I'm pretty sure I met agents, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like 60, 70, 80 transactions like in the team. I think there's someone in there that does even more than that. What are essential things that need to be developed to make a rockstar agent?
Wow. Well, I'm going to tell you from my perspective first, and then I'll tell you from their perspective. Well, let's talk about their perspective. There's no way anybody can ever do that kind of business, no agent at all, unless they have massive determination. I mean, they've got to have a high level. So this is on the agent. Like, the agent has to have massive determination. They have to have a lot of ability to kind of forget and move on, right? I would say like a quarterback for an NFL, he throws an interception, and the next thing you know, he's got to go on the bench. He can sulk for a minute, but he's got to get back out there and he's got to play again, right? And so they got to have the ability to kind of forget what happened yesterday and then go at it really hard again today. I give all the credit to agents who can produce at that level. The things I see inside of the people on my team, and even with the people within MFO, there's something inside of them that most people just don't possess. And so I'll say that first. I think as far as the leadership goes, though, I have to believe in them at a time at such a level when they don't believe in themselves. Michael Ferry always says this, and I will say this about anyone in my group. I always tell Mike, man, Mike, thank you so much for all things that you've done for me and my family. And he always says, I had the easy part. You're the one who did all the work. Yeah. And so I would just say, as a leader for Mike, he made me believe that whatever was in my crazy head, my fantasy land, that he said, that's not really fantasy land. You can make that a reality. And I would say that's my role in my team, is I'm the inspirer that says, I don't understand why you think that way. And let's talk about what you can do. And let's talk about the results of how that's going to make you feel. And let's talk about the glory that you're going to bring to your family and your kids when you are able to do all of these things. And then I get them to see something that they normally wouldn't believe is possible. But they are the engine. So if I can do that to a million agents with no engines, and we're going nowhere. Yeah. You have an agent with an engine in it, and they buy into your story as a leader, and you believe into them, holy smokes, they are unstoppable. So we're averaging about 36 deals per agent on our team.
That's incredible.
on average.
Because we've all seen those teams that have 50 agents and the per agent transaction level is 4 or 5, which,
Bernie said it best. He's like, if you look at the average commission in your area, so let's say it's like 5,000 and they're doing 4 or 5 deals. Do you really want someone making 20 to 25,000 representing your brand?
It's true.
Like what kind of quality are they going to actually go out there? So that's not a role of a leader, but
incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bernie, we appreciate you like crazy. You're a big influence, an amazing person, an amazing father, an amazing husband. What's the best way for someone to reach out and connect with you if they want to get in touch? John's looking at me like, that was long.
What's that?
I was hoping there'd be some more amazings.
Amazing. No, I love Bernie. I was horrified of Bernie when I first met him, and he thought we were brothers, by the way.
Yeah?
Do we?
I did.
I don't know if I should be, you got a good tan going right now. So,
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I'm not Italian. Y'all are Italian. So
I was telling KIRO this. I told Chase one or two. I'm like, man, KIRO, that's one of the nicest human beings I've ever met.
And too nice.
I mean, and I know how crazy you guys got when you were down here in Nashville. I heard all the stories. You guys having fun down on Broadway. But yeah, I enjoyed you a lot, KIRO, and
Thanks,
please feel free to come back anytime, man. It was a pleasure having you here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, just Nashville, Tennessee. Bernie Gallerani is my email address, bernie@berniegallerani.com. And that's my email. Feel free to email me any referrals you guys may have. We'd love to help your people here in Nashville. Still one of the top growing cities in the country, guys. 80 people a day are still moving here.
Wow.
And, it's pretty crazy. Housing market is okay, but probably better than a lot of places in the country.
Yeah.
So, we'd love to help anybody if they have something for us.
Incredible.
If you're a single male, Nashville is definitely the place to be. We'll include the link below to get in touch with Bernie's team and amazing group of people. And Bernie, thank you so much for being on, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys letting me do it.